Hey all, this is episode 4 of our conversation about mental health and understanding things of the spirit and the relationship between the two. Today's topic is going to be a little bit interesting. We're going to talk about manipulation. Um, it's actually going to be a couple of topics, um, but manipulation will be the main thing. So I'm going to start off actually by sharing a little bit of a story to speak to the healing power of Christ when it comes to mental illness. And then I'll get into the actual topic, and there will be, I'll probably go back to the story at a later time to show what it has to do with the here and the now, what it has to do with manipulation, what it has to do with what the Lord has shown me when it comes to mental health. So I always was prone to anxiety. I'm not going to share my whole testimony. That'll be a video for a different time, but I was always prone to anxiety, and as I got older, it only got worse, of course. And while I had many triggers and many things that contributed to my anxiety, one thing that I hadn't considered for like my entire existence, I always either looked internally or well, I didn't even think I had any issues or anything like that, like as far as anxiety goes. I didn't realize it until um you know people started kind of talking about it a little bit more. I realized later on that one consideration I had never made was my environment. That, it was contributing to me to feelings of anxiety. Around the age of maybe I don't know, like early 20s, somewhere early 20s, I started to realize there was some issues in my house. There were some things that were not how they should be. As far as relating to one another, me relating to my mom relating to me, how we speak to each other, everything. For the first time I realized we had a like a disagreement on something, and it was like I was really trying my best to diffuse the situation and be very you know respectful and everything, and it wasn't happening. And I walked away and I felt so defeated. It wasn't even necessarily that I was angry, I was hurt or anything. I just felt defeated, and it was a feeling that I had only experienced when I dealt with manipulation. Now, the thing about manipulation, obviously, is that actually, no, I'll talk about that later. Sorry. So, anyways, so I thought about it a little bit more, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I thought about it some more, and I realized, oh my gosh, there have been so many things that I have missed that have been wrong here, that I am hurting from, that I have been hurting from, always thinking it was my fault because that's how it was told to me. But now I'm seeing it from this different angle. Now I'm like, wait a minute, it can't always be my fault. That's not healthy. That's not normal. So I started to unravel. This was at a time when I wasn't leaning on the Lord. I don't even think I consider myself a Christian. Um, I started to really unravel. I started to recall things of the past and how it's like that time and that time and that time. Like, it just became this whole thing, and I really went through it. I ended up, um, becoming super anxious, like on a physical level, where I would go or I would have like breakdowns just being within close proximity. And that is horrible to be in a house where you're feeling that way. But that's just how it was. And I remember like when there were times when I could be at home by myself, it was like everything in life was perfect. The weight of the world was completely lifted off of me. And I couldn't live like that, obviously. No one would want to. Like any normal person, I tried everything to, move on, but I didn't realize that the Lord was against that. And I thought, like, for me, that's where peace will be found. Me leaving this situation, me getting out of here. But that wasn't the Lord's plans. And eventually um I rededicated my life in 2020, and I took it very, very seriously. And I remember anxiety was one of the first evidences of Christ, like, to me, like that he was real, because I was so anxious, I was so upset, blah blah blah. And I went to the Lord and I said, look, like, you are gonna get me out of here. Like that's how this is gonna go down. And I just remember coming across a teaching talking about, needing to come against um, the spirits that are afflicting you. You can't just pray about it. And I was like, oh, I mean, that does kind of make sense. We have been given power and authority, our words do hold weight. So I don't know, let me try this. But I was adamant about, like, my peace is going to come from not being here in this situation. But I said, I'll just try it. And I really, I went for it because I realized there's a possibility that I won't be able to, like, leave very easily. Like, literally every single time I started to make plans to, like, move or go to school or whatever the case was, something would happen and those plans would be shut down. And I'm like, how is this possible? Oh, I was so upset. So I said, you know what, let me just try this Jesus thing. And so I remember I started rebuking, and I started to, say things like, say that verse, like, for God does not give us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind, And I was, oh, I, I like channeled all the pain and anger that I felt into what I was saying, into coming against those spirits. And a week later, I realized, for whatever reason, things didn't bother me as much as they had before. Like, the issues were still there, but I wasn't as bothered. Like, it was just like, oh, well, I don't know. For some reason, I want to think about that verse. I want to think about God. I want to, like, hold on to him. It says he will keep in perfect peace those who stay focused on him. I'm like, that's what I want to turn my attention to, even though this threat is still here, this, anxiety threat. And from that time on, it was as if I was broken away from, or that I should say, the spirit of anxiety was broken off of me. Like, it didn't have the hold that it did. It's not that I couldn't go back to times of being anxious or anything like that, but it didn't have the hold that it had, because I no longer saw peace as the situation going away or me moving or anything like that. I saw peace as Jesus, because that's all I had. That's all I felt like I had. So fast forward to this year, Okay, so after that, actually, anxiety became less and less of a thing for me. Again, there were moments here and there, but not at like a everyday thing like, oh, I have anxiety, not like that. So fast forward to this year, you know, um, I knew the Lord had some plans for me, that He wanted to work in my life. And I was really excited and really like ready to, go, 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 go. It's like, finally, yes. But it wasn't going to be just like that. And I didn't realize that at the time. And so, because there was a lot of stuff I had to learn, a lot of stuff that I had to be like, I needed to go through pruning and all this stuff. And I found myself in a situation, the Lord had called me away from my job. So I found myself in a situation where I had to be at home. And even though like the anxiety had severely decreased for me, it helped to not when I wasn't, it helped to have that like natural balance of, okay, we're not here all the time, we're not in this house together all the time. I think honestly that could probably drive anyone crazy, but there was more than one thing there for me. But that was like a little bit of peace for me, I suppose, but it wasn't the Lord's will. So He called me away from my job and I had to come right back home, and instant anxiety starts to take over again, and I'm breaking down here and there, and then I'm realizing, okay, no, wait a minute, we've been through this before, I'm not doing this again. And this time it was just my own discomfort, my own, no, this isn't how it should be, like I want to be here, I want to be there. It had nothing to do with anyone else or anything like that. So anxiety was there because of my own self, but the Lord also tested me this year in ways that He hadn't before. He tested me before He released me to do this ministry more consistently and on the level that He has. And that meant, like, I had to stay where I didn't want to stay. There were unhealed wounds and stuff that, I was just like, you know what, let me just forget that and like, move on, whatever. But there was all that stuff going on. And there had been a change that I had come to know, but not as much, I should say, my household. That was going to be a major problem and an area in where He was going to use to test me, which I did not realize that was a thing. Now, He warned me through a dream that this was going to be a thing, but I didn't even know the extent of what this would look like. And so let me just wrap this up by saying, talk about anxiety-inducing situation. Things got really, 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 really bad for me at the beginning of like, or at the, like at the beginning of the summer, at June. In June. This summer, I just want to throw the whole summer away. It was really bad. But yeah, things got really bad, and I went through what I did earlier when I mentioned being a young adult and realizing, wait a minute, there's something not right here. I went through it again, but on a deeper level, because this time okay, so the first time I had only seen it from like a level of, I don't know how to explain it. It was like, well, that was not a good situation, but I didn't have the maturity, the insight, the voice to advocate for myself. And then I thought about other times and a few other times or whatever. But this time I had seen it from a perspective of, okay, now my mind has really been made sound by the Lord, by his hand. Now I'm seeing just the depth of how bad, like, some of our situations, my dynamic with me and the other in this household, like, now I'm seeing what that looks like, and it's really, really, really not good. Like, now I'm seeing it from a spiritual perspective of, no, like, deliverance absolutely has to happen. Like, it's not even just a, I need to go to therapy. Like, it's deeper than that. And I broke. Like, the first time I was just crying, whatever the case is. This time it was just like, okay, I'm just gonna lay in bed and I might not ever get up again. I spent like half of June in my bed. I'm not even kidding about that. And there's more reasons as to why that's the case, but I mean, it was really interesting, but it was bad. It was really, really bad. And I completely broke down, broke apart, broke whatever in every way. I just realized the depth of the need for deliverance and healing. Eventually, the Lord lifted me up, and, I don't know, by the grace of God, he's helped me. He's helped me. It's been a whole lot. I'll probably share maybe a little more in-depth testimony at some point, but it's been a lot. But I'm sharing this to say that despite all of that, the Lord kept me, because the weight of realizing that the situations that I had been in, the dynamic that I had, the pain that I was carrying, that I'll just share, like, one of the things was that both of my parents' emotional availability is not their strong suit. And if you know anything about that, if you've ever been in a dynamic of any type of relationship where that's the case, if they're not emotionally, like, chill, good, whatever, like, able to, regulate themselves, they definitely cannot emotionally provide for someone else. So, emotionally speaking, like, it just was as if I had lived my entire life unable to express myself beyond what was appropriate. There was just no room for my emotions. And the weight of that just crushed me. I felt like not even a human being, because it's like, how is it that every single time I show an emotion, I'm in the wrong? As a kid, I accepted that because, it's just unfortunate, but that's just how it is. But I was like, how is it that this is the case? This is not the case. This is not right. This is manipulative. Coming back to that point. But anyways, so I was really hurting, and I'm not that close with my dad, but we ended up having, like, so I was having issues with my mom, and then later I started having issues with my dad, and I'm like, oh, it's on both sides. Like, there's no safety for me. And I've known people who have had those kind of situations where, your parents love you and they care, but at the same time, there's something that's really, really not right here. And emotionally, like, it's just not a thing. There's more to unpack, but that's just for now. That's good enough. So I really, really broke. I didn't feel like a person. I felt very like, I questioned like my reality, like all of it, because it's like, what even is real? You know what I mean? Like, how do I, like, I've been living in this dynamic all this time, thinking it's one way, thinking I was the problem or whatever the case is. And now I'm just like realizing, no, not always. So it just, I don't know, it just completely broke me in pretty much every way. And the Lord had to put me back together. And the interesting thing is that throughout all of this, He didn't let me leave. Like, I had left to do a service project last year a little bit, for like a couple of months or so. So that was a nice break. And then I had also went, if you saw my Ireland testimony, I went overseas for, um, and that was by the Lord's will. That was by His hand for like a little over a month. But other than that, I still hadn't left ever, hadn't left home. And I'm like, this is just, I'm done with life. Like, I'm done. Like, this can't be, no. So throughout all of that, His hand was still with me. Throughout all of that, He sustained me. Throughout all of that, He lifted me up. At least for the now, for the here and the now, like mentally and emotionally and spiritually, and still found a way to make His healing power known in my life, even though my circumstances stayed the same. My circumstances hadn't changed. Now I'm starting to see the hand of God really, really move, and things are really starting to change. But I mean, 20 plus years and no change. So I'm in awe. Like, that is the Lord's healing power at work. Not just like allowing you to get out of that situation so much as walking you through it and healing you, because now there's an actual deliverance from anxiety where it's like, nope, I'm not doing this, I'm not going to that place, versus, you know, what would have happened. Just like I always say, you can be delivered but not be healed, not be fully healed. And I would have taken that anxiety and I would have gone here and there, and it would have carried with me. And one last important thing about this story is that both times, so the first time that I realized there was something wrong, and then this last time, like within this year, it started to become, well, actually more so this year, actually, to be honest, it started to become almost resentment, as it naturally like would when you realize you've been mistreated or lied to or deceived or manipulated or whatever your circumstances are. You naturally would get upset, get mad, and you feel like you start to resent, you start to have resentment. And if you're not careful, that can really fester into something horrible, you know. I mean, we shouldn't be carrying around resentment anyways, but yeah. So I don't know, the fact that the Lord like has healed me truly, I mean truly, like, it's just not even a, if I have a moment, and I do have my moments where anxiety wants to try me, it's like, okay, all right, let me put on my boxing gloves, let's go. you know because I'm not gonna do this, you know. So that freedom is just something so beautiful that I can walk in, that I can say, hey, you know. Anxiety doesn't have power over me, not only in this situation but moving forward. Like, oh, Those who the sun sets free are free indeed. Word. Anyways, so how does this relate to the topic of manipulation? Well, if you had been listening, you would see that the dynamic that I had elements of that. And let me actually share like how this came up, because I was like praying, Lord, are you gonna give me a topic? It was like he didn't speak to me until like the evening of yesterday, and so far he's been giving me a topic, you know, like earlier in the day. So I'm like, okay, I know what to speak about. But this time it was like the evening and I started to get a little bit nervous. But I was watching this video. You ever seen those videos on YouTube where it's like it goes through like a list of things, like going through every mental disorder, going through every religion, going through every like talking briefly about them. And one of them was manipulative tactics. I was looking at it and I said, yep, I know a thing or two about being gaslit. Yep, I know a thing or two about, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but that was one of them. But then my, as I was watching it, I started to realize, well, some of them are stuff that I've also done. I'm sure I've done. I know I've done, you know. And, you know, that's a problem as well. And I thought about it a little bit more. And I, more specifically when it came to like emotional issues, and I said, you know, I do the silent treatment thing, or did. I won't say I do, but I did the silent treatment thing a lot, which I didn't even realize was considered a manipulative tactic. Didn't realize that. Now, in my defense, if I may say so, the reason why I did it is because, one, that's just how the situations would escalate, and then we'd just both be silent with one another whenever there was an issue, number one. So I didn't know, I really didn't know any better. Like, the idea of talking things out was something that I always wanted to do, but it just never worked, or I'd never seen it displayed, or whatever the case is, number one. Number two, what was I gonna say? Shoot. I forgot what I was gonna say. But oh yeah, that was safety for me. That's what it was. That it was safety. Like, you know, the dynamic that I was used to was, if a parent was angry, they're, it sounds really sad, but they're allowed to say whatever they want, and you just have to take it. Like, there's no diffusing this. And that was the first time that I realized there was something really wrong, around like 23 or something like that. I realized, wait a minute, I'm coming at this with such gentleness and trying my best to like, for us to come together, and it's just like, no, like anything you say can and will be held against you. Like, oh my gosh, like this is, I feel insane. So what the Lord has showed me about that, I talked about this briefly in another video, is that when you argue with people, sometimes you're arguing with a spirit. In fact, many times you are, because argument where someone is only hearing their side and not listening to you means they're not listening to you, means they've lost their grip on reality. Because if you have two people disagreeing, obviously there's something that needs to be made right. There's some sort of solution that needs to happen. Now, I'm not saying every single time you're dealing with a spirit, but many times you are. When you know that this person is just straight up not hearing me, everything I'm saying they're taking and twisting and turning, that is indicative of them listening to a spirit and you arguing with the spirit. If you argue with the spirit, you will get nowhere. It's like when people say, don't argue with the narcissist. If you argue with a narcissist, you will get nowhere. They feed off of it. The more upset, the more you give them, the more you give them. and it will only, um, it doesn't serve you. It will only cause you to break. So I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend arguing in general, to be honest. But yeah, I realized, I was like, wait, this is there's something off here. And so yeah, my defense would be to shut down and just not say anything. But I didn't realize that it was actually considered a manipulative tactic. And because this was something I was so used to, I would take this into other, like any and every time there was a conflict, I would just, okay, we're not talking. Now, I wouldn't say that, I just would show that. And I said, dang. And I know, like, going through this list of these different manipulative things, I know, I'm sure there's been at least one situation where I've done or said this or that. At one point in my life, I was actually, I maybe not like a manipulative person, but I definitely could be manipulative. I'll put it that way. And I realized, well, that's a problem. So I'm hearing and I'm understanding all these different tactics that I didn't even realize were considered manipulation. Because in times prior, manipulation looked like someone who was like, just looking at you to see what they can get, blah, 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 pretty like mean, or maybe not, just really like evil. But then I'm seeing, okay, well, I know I have a hand in this as well. And I'm glad that I've matured. I'm glad that the Lord has showed me, like, don't do that, don't be that way, blah, blah, blah. But I know just being human, I have said and done certain things that were definitely manipulative. And when I looked at the scale of all the different definitions of, or tactics of manipulation, that again is something that only now are we realizing. Before, they didn't have that luxury to understand. Now we do. And it is a luxury, because that understanding helps us, not only on a personal note, but with those around us, helps us not give in to those kinds of ways of being and thoughts and everything. But I realized, oh my gosh, wait a minute. So first of all, wherever there is an issue, wherever there is, well, typically I should say, wherever there is like for instance, okay, for in my dynamic, the emotional availability and the gaslighting and all that stuff caused me to also act out in a way that was less than how it should be. So whenever there's a situation, most of the times, most situations, oh my gosh, most situations, whenever there is one guilty party, there's actually two. Because when there is no standard, or the standard isn't, here, how do I say this? It's going to be very, very difficult for you to, in most cases, rise to that occasion or set a standard. In fact, in certain cases, it'll be impossible. I hope what I'm saying is making sense. Like, you will not be able to create a standard of respect, create a standard of communication or whatever, just on your own. So when something there is broken, when You're not equally yoked. When one of you has a sound mind and the other doesn't, or more of a sound mind, whatever, both parties are going to suffer. Both parties are going to be at fault. Both parties are going to experience the weight of the, I don't want to say sin, but potential sin, most likely sin. Going back to my first topic when I talked about not having a sound mind versus having a sound mind. When you don't have a sound mind, you will be offended, you will be argumentative, you will gaslight, be manipulative, you won't have room for anyone else's feelings, blah, 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 because you're gonna be self-centered. You can be a self-centered person emotionally, or miss it emotionally and be good in a whole bunch of other areas. And that was kind of my dynamic, to where it went like a lot of my issues between me and both of my parents honestly went undetected, because there was the surface level that was like, it was fine, whatever. But yeah, if even just part of the equation is messed up, the whole thing is going to be messed up. And by the spiritual understanding here is, if you do not allow the Lord to transform your mind, to work on you, for you to be walking in your calling, walking in the things that you need to be doing, it will affect other people. 100%. 100%. And while, again, it might not necessarily be a sin, it's definitely not what we're called to be doing. Being emotionally healthy or not healthy or whatever, it isn't a sin per se. Again, I mentioned, I think in my last video, people who are like, I don't need to talk anything out, I don't need to go to therapy or anything like that. That's not a sin. There's nothing wrong with that. Well, that's not a sin. Let me say that. It's that in of itself is not a sin, but you also need to understand that you're probably speaking from a spirit of pride by saying something like that. That's not true for everyone, because some of us are pretty self-reflective people. That doesn't mean we get everything, but, if you're someone who's really motivated to do better, to examine self, blah, 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 to examine your relationships, all that stuff, is a little bit different. But most people are not. Most people are just like, I'm good, and it's like, maybe not. Maybe you thinking that you're good is actually really a sign that you're not. Because, like, personally, like, I'm a pretty self-reflective person, but I realize within that I am not good. Like, I need the Lord at the very least, and if I can get someone who can give me some wisdom, then why would I not? But anyways, so yeah, first thing is that when part of a situation is broken, the whole thing is going to be broken. So the lesson in that is that when I talked about how I started to become resentful and almost slip into bitterness and all of that, I couldn't see my hand in it. I didn't consider, maybe I have, maybe I haven't, maybe me going silent, maybe that was hurtful to the other party. I saw it as me trying to protect myself. I saw it as me, having safety, but maybe it was like, wow, guess she doesn't care. I guess I have to, come in and make this right or something like that. Because to be honest, at the height of me using silent treatment as a way to cope, I just literally would not, like, we just would not talk again unless you said something. Like, I'm just, whatever, I don't care anymore because, the hurt just ran that deep. So I didn't consider my side to it, whether they actually felt that way or not. I do know I have had friends that I've done that to that did feel it. So it's possible that it was felt also in my household. I don't know, but I realized, like, okay. And this is so true. The Holy Spirit showed me that very, very, very few things are one-sided. There's always something that you can consider, always a perspective change. Even if that person came at you like all sideways and everything, you did nothing to them. There might be a perspective. If for no other reason, the fact that the Lord says that, what does he say? He says, though he will keep in perfect peace those who stay focused on him, those who look towards him. So at the very least, me being bothered, even if it is justified at the end of the day, me being bothered is a lack of me focusing on Christ. There's a natural, like, offense that we can have and we can carry, but if it's to the point of consuming us or anything like that, or to a level of like you're speaking from a place of hatred towards that person, which is a lot of what we see going on in this world, so much of it, now you're in trouble. Now you're actually guilty, whether you realize it or not. And you're using the same or a very similar tactic as what that person did to you in most cases. Not all, but most. So it's like, wow, we have a hand to play in every situation. And that's kind of the mindset that I try to have when dealing with people with if they have an issue with me, if I have an issue with them. It's like, okay, what role do I play in this? And it set me free so much, because I don't have to carry the burden or the weight of, like, well, you need to be doing this, or you said this, or you did that. It's like, at the end of the day, whether that person realizes it or not, whether they apologize or not, I have peace as my portion in Jesus' name, and I am going to walk in it. I'm not letting you take my peace away. What the heck? No, thank you. So anyways, so that was one thing that he revealed to me. Big thing that he revealed to me. Another big thing that I mentioned is that manipulation is, back in the day, like I say, people had a different view of it. So it's good that we've expanded it, that we realize that no, there's more to it than just someone being very calculated, blah, blah, blah. Like, even within my ignorance of the fact that silent treatment could be considered manipulative, it wasn't fair to the other person. Now, unfortunately, again, if you don't have a situation that is fair, if there's no standard, then it's all going to be messed up. And that's what we see in this world. People want justice, people want to right the wrong of this and that nowadays, politically, socially, politically, whatever. And it's like, y'all, when has anything ever been fair on this earth? Like, just set yourself free from that delusion that anything has ever been fair or will ever be fair. If you know that if you're not a narcissist and you know that you miss it, that you're a human being, you get things wrong, you can be short-sighted with something and only see it from your perspective, normal, totally, like, understandable. Why do you think that we're going to have fairness or justice on this side of the heavens? Why do you think that? I don't know. Anyways, so yeah, the Lord showed me that, manipulation, what people thought manipulation was back in the day is not what it really is. And I'd like to draw on two verses here. Number one, above all, the heart is wicked and the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked. Number two, I always butcher this verse, but it's Jesus speaking. I think it's in Matthew, and he says something like, let your yes, say a simple yes or no, anything in between is of the evil one. I'd like to draw on those verses because both of those show, I guess, the ease of how simple it is for us to slip into arrogance or unkindness or manipulation or whatever without even being aware. This is also why there's such an emphasis on take captive every thought that exalts itself above the things of Christ. Let this mind be in you that is also in Christ. Like, it's our disposition to be selfish. It just is. And carnal. It's our disposition to be a little bit manipulative too. And that's something that is inherent to us. And it, by the world standard, they will just see, oh, you're a nice person, whatever. But like, the heart is the issue. You can be a nice person outwardly, but there is still some heart stuff. If you have not been transformed by the Lord's redemptive power, there are heart issues within you. 100%. It's just how it is. And I've met some really, really kind people who aren't in the faith and are just like friggin' angels, right? But there's still a discrepancy between the Lord's kindness and our kindness, and our view of things and his view of things. Anyways, so the Lord showed me that was their example back in the day of what manipulation looked like. It was a lot more like, calculated. They didn't understand some of the words that were said to them, and this goes into the generational video that I did, so watch that if you haven't. They didn't even realize that what they had been told, what they had heard growing up, whatever, could have been manipulative. And so they carry that and they pass that on. So there's a lack of understanding. And there was something really powerful that he gave me that, and this is just wisdom in general. Our language shapes our thoughts, and thoughts also can shape, our language. But our language definitely plays a role on our thoughts. And so if we don't have the language to understand certain things, there will be certain perspectives that just won't be there. And that just goes to speak on how powerful our words are. Oh my gosh. So anyways, the last thing that the Lord revealed to me was that, and the kind of take home message, I suppose, would be, so going back to my story, when I was really, really hurting, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe my whole life I have had this, I've had that. I'm talking about the negative side of it. Like I have been gaslit. I have been invalidated in all my feelings, blah, 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 all this stuff. And when he highlighted my role in how I have also been, someone who had manipulative things to say at times, manipulative things that I've done, whatever the case is. What set me free was that he showed me, she was like this. You have been like this. You're dealing with something everyone else is dealing with. And I was like, wait a minute. Really? I shouldn't say everyone. I shouldn't say that. Most people are dealing with. And I said, now, wait a minute. Let me sit with this. So, while we're hurting because we're feeling the effects of someone treating us less than fair, less than how they should, less than Christ-like, and it feels like the weight of the world. And this is something that a lot of young people are experiencing. And it's not just young people, but anybody. It could be towards your government, could be anything. You feel like so upset and so hurt and everything. But literally, this is just the this is just the portion of a fallen world. This is just the lot of not having a sound mind and letting sin reign supreme. This is just what happens. An unfair system over here is an unfair system everywhere. Or as Martin Luther King says, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And I'm like, that is so deep. I don't know if people understand that it's like any sin that you participate in, it has cyclical, well, it does have cyclical effects, but it has, what am I trying to say? It affects everything and everyone around you. It's not just you. It's not just you. And so I kind of felt a freedom last night that I hadn't felt a different level. Like, this is an ongoing thing, this healing, but he's definitely like doing some work in me. But that set me free on a level that I hadn't been before, that it's like, oh, so this language, if you look at all the different things that constitute like manipulative language, if you have any amount of self-reflection in you, self-awareness in you, you'll say, oh, yep, I've done that, or I do that, or whatever the case is. So I was like, oh my gosh, so we're all victims here. We're all victims. Maybe some of us more than others, but we all have had some sort of deal with this. And it just reminds me of that verse that talks about, yes, say yes and no, and everything in between is of the evil one. And how we don't even realize, how easy it is to slip into that kind of language, that evil language, or what I believe spiritually there's a term for it. It's called like dark speeches or something like that. But actually, no. Dark speeches is when the Lord speaks to you, like it's mentioned in a verse in Genesis, I think. He talks about like speaking. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I could be wrong about that one. But yeah, we speak less than, we speak as people who have a heart that is deceitful and desperately wicked without even realizing it. And that's the gag. We don't even realize it. Thinking that we're okay, thinking that we're good, thinking that, there's nothing wrong with what I've said, but more often than not, we're not honest with the place that we're coming from with our communications. And so I'm sharing all this to say, I hope this helps someone to realize maybe this will set you free. Whatever you're going through in regards to like mental health, especially if it's something where it's like, oh yeah, my parents or my situation or something like that. um I spent my whole life being gaslit. I spent my whole life being manipulated, all this stuff. So is everyone else, to be honest. It's not anything different. It's not anything new. That's why so many people are experiencing it, because it's been so prevalent, and we experience the effects of sin. I mentioned this in another video, but it's worth repeating. We experience the effects of sin even if we can't see that it's sin. Even if we don't understand that what we're dealing with is sin, we experience the effects of it. And we reject it, but we don't fully reject it, because we'll reject it over here, or if it looks like this, but then we'll have a hand in it in the same exact way and not even realize it. So I'm like, dang, that's really, that's deep. So, oh, another thing, just to, before I end this, is, I do know that there are such thing as people who are calculated within their being manipulative. That's more of an extreme. It's not as common, but it is a thing, and I'm not referring to them as much in this type of video, because obviously there's something seriously wrong there. I'm talking about us in everyday situations who don't see what, what we're saying, what we're doing, what we're dealing with. Because if you know what you're dealing with, you're unstoppable, right? You know exactly what you're dealing with. And that's where the enemy has his power. It says in the word, do not be ignorant of the devil's devices. It also says, my people perish because of lack of knowledge, I think. Knowledge or wisdom, I can't remember which. But yeah, we need to know what we're dealing with. And that's where power is found. So anyways, I know this was kind of a little bit all over the place, and I apologize about that. But I do hope it helped. It set me free, so I hope it'll help someone else out. If this video did help you, please do like. If anything was confusing, please comment and let me know so I can clarify. And thank you for watching. Bye!